Hello. First, I'd like to thank you for participating in our little experiment, because the most important ingredient of the magic that we're trying to create is you. I hope you find something meaningful in my conversation with Dave Zaboski. He is a multidisciplinary creator and teacher, and as a Disney animator, he helped bring into life such classics as The Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and many more. We discussed his path as an artist, overcoming creative blocks, and the power of a narrative. Through our conversation, I became more aware that Dave has enabled himself to harness the divine creative energy of illuminating thought. And without further ado, please enjoy the first episode of Who Cares. All right, syncing up again. Okay.
Right.
All right. Again, Dave, thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be here.
And so our main topic for today, I think, was going to be art. You're an incredible artist. Quite a bit of history. So if you could take me back towards like the beginning of your art journey, with a little bit about your childhood and your discovery of yourself being an artist.
Yeah. There's one of my favorite quotes by this artist called Hokusai, who said, "I have done a universe of drawing in my life." Like, I really love that because I feel like that's me. Like, I started drawing when I first picked up a crayon. I feel like I never put the crayon down. Like, I just loved to make marks, made marks on the walls. My dad liked to draw, and so I really used to love looking at his drawings and copying his drawings. And when I was in first grade, I discovered calligraphy, and I was just amazed by it. And so, like, there was something meditative about the practice of calligraphy, the thick and thin of it, and making lines over and over and over again to get it right, like 100 A's, 100 B's, and go through the whole alphabet. And for me, like, I just loved that. And I learned cursive when I was in third grade, but I think I probably knew, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 fonts by then that that I was fluent with to be able to write with. I never thought of the fonts as at the same way as writing or script. I always thought of them as art. So I never associated with, you're not going to do a homework assignment with fonts, but I love that kind of thing.
So for you, it kind of began with the actual physical movement of.
I loved kind of all of it. I love the physical and the aesthetic. Like, actually watching ink dry, it's really interesting, like
Sure.
To be so micro about something, like to watch how it changes color or how it bleeds into other colors and then I was also, I loved working, playing outside. So it was the combination of the beauty of creation and the opportunity to kind of play my role in that, to create something beautiful.
Yeah. It seems like you, at a very young age, you already had the inclination of creating something and like turning your thoughts and your ideas into physical form.
Yeah, that was always really exciting to me. Like, I had a small business when I was a kid making zodiacal signs on, like the ram or the archer or things like that, right? Using magnifying glass on thin pieces of wood. So I'd find out what one of my neighbor's signs was. They're Pisces. Awesome. Hey, I made this Pisces for you. Do you want to buy it for 25 cents?
Okay.
And so yeah, I always really loved the making of things. I feel like.
But you also were able to marry in the entrepreneurial side of your art.
When you're a kid, it totally seems normal. It doesn't. You don't think of yourself as an entrepreneur. You think, I made something awesome. You should buy it.
Yeah.
And then we get bent as we get older, and people come up to you and they go, "Oh, you're an artist? Hey, man, can you make me a drawing?" Like, nobody ever goes to a banker and says, "Oh, you're a banker? That's awesome. Can I have $100?" They do that with us all the time. I think that there's a training that happens later. I think when I was a kid, I was like, I made something awesome. You should pay for it.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, I think that as an artist, that's always a challenge in terms of how do you value your time and your
Right.
creation. There's a lot of uncertainty once you start entering into the professional artist realm.
Right. Right. And also, the more tuned in you are to the internal magic that you have and the more capacity that you have to express that, it gets challenging because I feel like the thing that I'm expressing is a gift given to me by some other thing, right? Like I'm an expression of the intelligence of the world when everything is working, right? Like when I'm making art that I'm like on a commission, I may not always feel that way,
Yeah.
right? But there are times when I'm creating and I feel like I am a hand of the divine and I am a tool of its expression. And that feels really good, but then how do you charge for that?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not, I feel like I've been a conduit. How do I make somebody pay for me being a conduit? But it's not that it comes easy. It's a lot of practice. So I think we have to learn how to recognize our value as a conduit also.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that is quite a challenge for artists, especially the ones that really do feel like their work touches on the spiritual sometimes. It's not always like that, but there are just magical moments like that. Yeah.
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 I think it doesn't always overtly touch on the spiritual, but I also feel like sometimes our acts of creation, they're they're an attempt at emulating the divine, like God creates. So, for me to create, I emulate the divine in my acts of creation. I'm not going to make a universe or a star or anything, but my little acts of turning a thought into a thing are that's like the magic of creation, So, so there is something just uh, divinely rooted in every act of creation. And the more you're aware of it, the harder it is to charge for it.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Um, I don't know if you know the artist David Cho.
It
He
sounds
he got really
familiar.
famous. He did some work with Facebook, and when they went public, of course, the value of that just blew him up.
Right.
But he's local LA artist, really prolific, and yeah, and I think this is one thing that I see in every artist is great art is free, right? And it's like, and it knows itself, and it's very aware of itself, and I think that's the challenge for artists. It's like, how do you find your uniqueness in this whole array of possibilities?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so can you talk to me about like um, your path? Because I know that a huge thing about you is you were an artist for one of the biggest places for art to thrive and that people recognize, Disney. Um, how was your time with them, and like how did you kind of get into that?
Um, all right, I'll roll back a little bit. And I want to, I like what you were saying, like art is free. I might even say like art is freeing, but maybe not free.
No.
Right?
No. Yeah.
Right. No, I know you like I think we're saying the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Like art, there is something freeing about the ability to create. For my part, like my family always supported creativity, and both my parents were teachers. They were school teachers, and it was a time when we had arts in the schools, so there was some attention paid to it. Um, I just love to draw. I always loved to draw, and when I was in high school, I finally took an art class. Like everybody was like, "Oh, you love to draw. You should take an art class." And I'm here to tell you that more great creators have been ruined by art teachers than any other source on planet Earth, right? And you know, I had a teacher in high school, and I got a D plus in high school art. Now, I was an animator at Disney. I got a D plus in high school art. And I'm not the only guy with a story like that at Disney. But I think that one of the things that happened for me in high school was I had been drawing a lot. I was pretty good at it by the time I took an art class as a junior in high school. I was 16 or so, right? And so mature enough to have had some experience making art, but not very mature as a person. And so so when there were 10 projects to do, like you got 10 points on each project. And by the time this teacher had me, she probably had 10 years of teaching artists or teaching students who thought art was a blow-off class, right? And so for her, an artist like me doesn't come around very often, and I'm not sure she knew what to do with me. And so she would give an assignment that would say, make a sphere out of charcoal and light it from one side so you can practice figuring out what the shadows are on a sphere. Okay. Right? I mean, I did that 10 years earlier, So for me, I took that assignment and I turned it into an Indian head that I did with pen and ink because it was less forgiving. And I wanted to really challenge myself. So I took her projects and I extended them out into what would challenge me. But by the time I did that project, it kind of didn't resemble, like if you put them all on the board, they'd be like, hey, one of these things is not like the other, right? And so they'd look at all that stuff and they go, oh yeah, there's Dave's over there. What the F is he talking about, right? Like we all made spheres. He made an Indian head. I don't understand why. What is he, so like that kind of thing. So at the same time I was in that class, I was in a social studies class that was so boring that I drew on the desks every day, right? And I did these elaborate drawings. I had an hour in 10 minutes or whatever, right, to do a really nice drawing on the desk. And he would basically read a chapter out of the book. So if you read the book, you kind of were up to speed. You didn't need him to read the chapter. And so it was a terrible social studies class with an instructor who sort of saw himself as a little bit more advanced. And so he would interview you for your grade at the end of the semester, right? Okay. And so I came in for my interview and he goes, all right, well, that's great, Dave. Your tests were fine. I'm going to give you a B. But I got to ask you, were you the one doing the drawings on the desk every day? And I was like, oh, shit. Well, this is the end of the thing. Yeah, I was. That was me doing the drawings, And I was also thinking, like, how come you don't know that it was me? Like, shouldn't you know that it was me? Like, how dense are you in this class, right? Every day there'd be a drawing on those beautiful Formica, like those fake Formica desktops that were super smooth, and a number 2 pencil just glided across the top. You could smudge it with your finger. You could create renderings, like I created worlds. It was exciting, And then the janitor would come in every day and he'd wash it all down and it'd be clean the next day, right? And so he goes, all right, I'm going to give you a B. But if you were the one doing those drawings, I'm going to bump you a grade because every day after class, the whole row of teachers would come in to see what you drew that day.
Wow.
And so the same semester that I got a D plus in high school art, probably for being too social, right? I got an A in social studies for being so arty. So that was kind of a mixed message that spun me for a little bit, right? Like I couldn't rely on the art teacher for training, but I couldn't really get much help from a social studies teacher. And so I kind of put it away, like a D plus was embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's the worst grade I got in high school. And this is my greatest love, And so I was pretty sure she was wrong. And so that, I think, was why I didn't get broken by that. I think I did a piece for the citywide art show that I also got a blue ribbon in, right? And I actually didn't know until a couple of years ago when I was the judge at that very competition.
No way.
That the blue ribbon was the top prize. I thought there was like 1, 2, 3, and then you got a blue ribbon, So I didn't really understand the whole thing. So like I turned in a piece of art, I got a blue ribbon on it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Citywide art show and I was like in the high school division or something like that, yeah. Right? And then, I don't know, 30 years later, I'm the judge of that same competition. And so that's kind of nice little poetry. But because of those kind of artistic turnarounds, that sort of public embarrassment. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to share this shit with people anymore. I don't want to be judged on my art, which is where a lot of us go, And so I went to UCSB. I got a couple of degrees there in psychology and French literature.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I loved drawing and I kept doing it. And so for my fraternity, I did all of the ads, the drawings, the T-shirt designs for events. Like anything that we did that needed a poster, it came to me. And so that was super fun. I did logo designs for McBurley's. Do you remember McBurley's?
No.
It's it's right at there was a little restaurant right at the entrance to the bridge that goes into campus off of what is it, Pardal or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Anyway,
there's owned by Freebirds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I did a logo for that place. I think I did some work for Woodstock Pizza at one point.
Okay.
I just I did art on the side, and I did drawings for friends for their birthdays because you couldn't get a grade on a birthday present. So then I graduated from college, and the joke is I come from a big Jewish family in Los Angeles, and they're like, you can be anything you want, Dave. Now that you have a degree, what kind of doctor or lawyer are you going to be? Right? So, yeah, I was kind of like, okay, well, what kind of doctor or lawyer am I going to be? I don't think I want to be a doctor. Let's go into law. So I took all of the preparation for the LSAT. I got into 93rd percentile on the LSAT. So I had some runway that looked pretty good. But I was like, what does a lawyer really do? And so I took a gap year after college and got a job in a big law firm in Beverly Hills. And I hated every second of it. It was misery. I got yelled at for staples not being lined up perfectly.
Oh, no.
It was and we were the counsel for this company called Drexel Burnham Lambert. And they were the company that did the whole savings and loan crisis in the late 80s. So there have been generational crises where the smart people in the room loot the middle class from all of their wealth. You saw it in 2008 and 9 with the real estate debacle. About 25 years before that, it was savings and loans. And I was in the middle of it. I was a paralegal at the law firm, Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, that was heading up. They were the counsel for the guys doing all the savings and loan skullduggery. And the lawyers, they give opinions. So they don't say, here's what you should do. This is, in our opinion, what you might do. And so they stay out of trouble that way. So Drexel Burnham Lambert got buried by it. Enron got buried. All of these guys went to jail. But the attorneys were like, we know where the bodies are buried. We'll help you unbury them. Right? That's kind of how it works. Because they gave opinions. You should bury that thing over there. If you do bury it over there, you're the one who gets arrested for murder and burying a body. They just know where it is. Right? And so I hated every minute at that law firm. I remember working in this office on the 42nd floor in Century City. And I remember hearing Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here come on. And I had just had this guy in my office for a $15 million test loan. $15 million. Listen, Omar, we're going to do this test loan with you. If it works, I'll introduce you to the guys upstairs and you can talk about some real money. But for the time being, it's, I'm the lowest rung at the law firm doing $15 million loans with this guy, right? And it was it's really distorted. It was really I felt like where I worked, everybody looked like ants out the window. And they all sort of were, you could go your whole day, you could go your whole week walking on marble, and every surface is polished so you could see a reflection in it. And you could live in a beautiful house, get in your car in your garage, drive to your work, go into the underground parking, and never actually see the real light of day, and but go to the gym, stay fit, go on a nice vacation a couple times a year. It was a real rat race that didn't appeal to me at all. And then I'm listening while I'm working on this paperwork, and My rabbit, if you guys are on camera, my rabbit is running around the floor here. We want to make sure he doesn't eat the cables. So it's sort of like there's a shark nearby, you know.
A really fluffy one.
There's a really fluffy, super cute shark. Don't eat that cable. If one of the cameras goes out, you know why. So this song, Wish You Were Here, comes on, right? So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue sky from rain, like that suite right there, that poem in there is just beautiful, right? Did they get you to trade a walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage, right? Like, so you think you can tell heaven from hell, right? Oh shit. I started to think about those lyrics, and they just hit me in the middle of my soul, right? Like, I had an office on the 42nd floor, views of the ocean, everybody there, coat and tie all day long, you know, hard-soled shoes on, you know, polished banisters and beautiful art, and it was a lead role in a cage. And so I was like, man, I want to be in the place where the fulcrum is, right? Like, I want to be in that place where the pencil meets the paper, where I'm not, like, here's another little story. I met a guy named Bob in Forms. So if you needed anything, you would go talk to Bob in Forms. Everything that had ever been done in law has a precedent to it. And so you don't really need to make up anything. So if you need something, you call Bob in Forms. What do you need? Oh, I got a form for that. That also seemed like hell to me, right? So I wanted to be in that place where the pencil met the paper, and I didn't really know what to do about that. And so I knew I couldn't stay at the law firm. And so I knew about this school called Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, top art school in the world. And I was like, if anybody knows what, you know, if this is going to work, it's them. And so I went to all of my friends that I gave birthday presents to, and I went and collected them. It was fantastic. I did like a 10-day drive in my little Honda Civic around California, because all of my friends from UCSB now after college are all like, you know, dispersed to all of the places that they're from, right? And so I was like, hey, can I borrow that piece for a portfolio? And so everybody was like, you know, it was a coming out. Like, you know, when you have a friend who 20 years later says, you know, I'm gay, and you're like, yeah, we knew, right? You know, it's kind of the same sort of thing, you know? Like I was like, hey, I think I might go to art school. Can I borrow that piece back? And everybody's like, oh my God, yes, that's what you should do. We didn't know why you were going into law, because that was really dumb. But yeah, we totally support this. So, like, you know, I got dinners all over the California going to collect stuff. Everybody was super excited about that. And so I put together a portfolio with all of these things. I took it to Art Center, and it was a little bit strange and loose in those days. So it was sort of like you come in, you drop off a portfolio, and I really just wanted an interview. I was like, hey, if I were to go to art school, like, not this one, because this is the best one in the world, right? But if I wanted to get into an art school, what do I need to do, right? Can you look at my portfolio and let me know what I need to do? And they were like, yeah, go put it over there and we'll make an appointment for you. And I was like, okay, fine, you know? And I don't know if you've been up to Art Center. Like, it's,
No.
like, the building is at the time, it was this steel and glass bridge. It's beautiful and a little bit austere. And the art in there is like, amazing, and it's a little intimidating, you know, so it's kind of confused. The hallways are narrow, and they're like, put your portfolio over there. And I was like, okay, you'll call me, cool. And so, like, 3 weeks later, I got an acceptance letter.
No way.
And I was just like, what, you know? And so immediately gave my 2 weeks notice to the law firm, and then I started in January of that, like, I don't know, about a year and a half after I graduated from college. And so, yeah, I was a little older going to Art Center. I think I was probably 24 or 25 when I got into art school. And I never looked back, man. I felt like I wanted to shift my little Honda into sixth gear every night. Like, I was so jazzed. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to learn. So I was super motivated. And it's from Art Center that I got they had these internships at Disney. And so Disney would go to the top 50 art schools in the country, and they would call about 50 portfolios. And then they'd invite like 10 or 12 of those guys to come and do an internship, and the internships were in Florida, and I was in Los Angeles, right? And so I was like, oh my God, go to Florida for the summer to work at Disney? Because art school is fucking hard. There was a study when I was in art school that looked at the degree of difficulty of a school based on the amount of time that the students spent on work that was assigned. So that's sort of how they equalized it, right? The students will spend a particular amount of time, and the more time they spent, that was like the harder the school was. And so the top 3 schools were something like, I don't know if I have the second and third order right. The first one was like Harvard Law. The third one was Yale Med School. And the second one was Art Center Undergraduate, right? So I just wanted to get out of there. I just wanted an internship at summer in Florida where I could go to the beaches and draw a little bit for Disney or something, right? So the first 2 years that I applied for it, I was one of the 50 portfolios, but I didn't make the final cut to come and be invited for the internship. And the third year, I turned in like a ton of sketchbooks and all this work. And the third year, I got it. I got was one of the 50, and then I was one of the interns that was invited. And that year, you just keep moving there. Nothing to see here, Sharky. That year, it was in Los Angeles and not in Florida. And in fact, it was like 4 blocks from where I was living.
No
so it's
way.
sort of like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where you win the golden ticket and it's like in your neighborhood. And so, I was kind of like really excited to go to Florida, and, then they pay for your expenses and they put you up. And for me, they didn't have to do any of that. I could ride my bike to the studio. But it turned out to be pretty amazing. And they had 3 positions open that year. And this artist called Glen Keane did this talk about animation. And, the bottom line of his talk was that animation is only limited by what you can dream. And he had such an enthusiasm for it and such a love for the endless depths of the potential of this medium, that I just got lit up. And I went home that night and I worked on a little piece of animation, and I worked all night. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do with my life. Like, this is it. Like, I felt like I was in love. And I went to bed. I had an 8 o'clock meeting, and I had, I was 5 minutes away from the place by bike. So, I had the best 2 hours of sleep that I think I'd ever had in my life that morning. Like, I just knew this is what I'm going to do. And so I fought super hard, and I got one of the I joke like I had to slit a few throats. That's a line from Aladdin. I wasn't actually convicted. So, but I realized like this is what I want to do. I'm going to fight super hard for this. And I had been a Division 1A athlete in soccer at UCSB. So like I knew what playing super hard felt like. And this was an application of that level of commitment to playing hard. Like, I want this. There's better artists here than in my art school. Like any of the instructors in my art school, there's better artists here, and there's 1,000 of them, So I got one of the internships, and the first movie I got to work on was Beauty and the Beast. And then I was in the chocolate factory, man. It was like, it was super fun. It was wild horses who knew we were up to something really good. We were committed to an artistry that was dependent not on just us being good, but it was dependent on like the legacy. Like, you couldn't just be good for now. You had to be as good as those guys. And holy shit, those guys were good, right? So that's a little bit of my story, like how I ended up in show business, right? That's what my wife does. Like, she'll come into the room and she'll maybe drop something on the floor and go, damn it. Well, and that's how I got into show business.
Okay.
That's her line.
So it seems like you're somebody who doesn't quite have a creative block, but more of like, in the beginning, it was finding the path. Like, like you said, eventually you woke up and you're like, hey, I'm going to make a road trip and visit all these friends that I've done what I am for them selflessly, right? Which broke it all, and like broke you through that this whole life that you have just been committed to.
Yes, but blocks happen, right? So what it doesn't like, I don't want to give the impression that it's all super easy. Like I say, I played as hard as I possibly could, and then once I got into Disney, it was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Like these were the best artists in the world that you're playing with, right? And they're fun and hilarious and amazing, and they are fucking good. Like there's no doubt. They make a line, and it sings. It's like you can hear it. They do scribbles on a piece of paper, and it becomes a character that you fall in love with, that makes a difference for your mythology as your life expands, right? Like these are magicians here, and it's a kind of what I call slow magic. Like fast magic is, like this is fast magic, right? Okay, that's fast magic. Slow magic is an alchemy. Like it takes time to burn, and you have to keep focusing on its light. Like it's a practice that never ends, and there's mentorship, and mentorship goes both ways. I'll tell you a little story that happened to me in art school. In art school, I was blocked. I was paying for my own way through art school. It was super expensive. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, and I was scared, and I got blocked. And I was so blocked that I was living with 5 other artists in a zoo. I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't make marks. I just didn't know what to do. I was so wound up that I couldn't unwind myself. And there was this guy coming to speak called Milt Glaser. Milt Glaser, I think he passed away recently. He was a New York artist that was incredibly creative. Like he did album covers and magazine covers and spot illustrations and cartoons and furniture design and jewelry design. And I was like, oh my God, this guy, right? And I thought, he's going to ask for questions at the end of his talk, and I'm going to be ready because I'm so blocked, but this guy's got my answer, right? And so at Art Center, they had this theater, and it holds 500 people, and it was standing room only. And I got in there early and sat up as close as I could because I knew I wanted to ask a question. I even wrote the question down on a piece of paper in my sketchbook because I was so racked that I knew that if I didn't read it, I wasn't going to be able to say it, right? And so question and answer time comes, and I'm just blown away by the amazing creativity and the elan that he presented just up on stage. He loved what he did, right? And he goes, any questions? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get this one answered. So my hand shoots up, and I said, like, so I stood up, and I was looking at this page in my sketchbook, and I just couldn't, I kind of went blind. I was just like, so I quickly tore it out. I walked into the main aisle. I walked up to the front to the stage, and I handed him my question, right? Because I needed it answered so badly, and I was incapable of saying anything, right? Like I was vapor locked, right? And so then I turned around, and I walked away, and he was like, well, that was a little weird, and everybody giggled, right? And then he read it, and he said, how do you overcome creative blocks? That was my question. And he looked at it and he went, that's a great question. Yeah, I go to the fridge, right? And everybody laughed. He goes to the fridge, and, it was really his nice little giggle and everything. And I'm walking back to my chair, and I go, he goes to the fridge. That's great. He goes to the fridge. The fridge. Nice. Fuck. Like, okay, well, what happens at the fridge, right? Like, if you think this through, what happens at the fridge? You make a sandwich, you cool your head off, you get a cold drink. What do you do at the fridge that unblocks this ice flow of mind and heart and spirit and lets your creativity like loosen its bounds and run free to the ocean? Like, what the fuck happens at the fridge, right? And so in that moment, I was like, yeah, I am going to need more information.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't like this block. And I don't want this to ever happen again. And so I better figure this shit out. And so I started cultivating practices for creativity, right? Like, for example, people say, I'm not good with names. I'm sorry, I'm not just not good with names. I had a mentor once who was like, dude, that's bullshit. People's names are important to them, right? You should be good with names. And I was like, oh, wow. So am I not good with names as a function of my makeup, or is that a story that I told myself and I just practice it? And so I wanted to explore that. So I started to say, oh, I'm really good with names. And I have practices, and they might include, hey man, I'm really good with names, but I forgot yours. Can you remind me one more time, right? And then people go, oh yeah, my name is Michael, and you're like, oh cool, all right, awesome, and then you figure out practices to be able to live in the story that you say you're creating. And that level of creativity, that's where magic is. Because it's not just remembering names. It's like, yeah, I can do this. I can do that. Like what do you want to be good at that practice can help you get there? Now, I'm not going to be Kim Jong-gi. I don't know if you know who that is. Like, no. In the art world, even the best guys go, that fucking guy's a magician, right? I'm not going to be Michelangelo, but I'm going to be connected to my creativity at the deepest level that I possibly can. And I am going to explore all of the practices that support that, including practices outside of my discipline. And so I became a cultivator of practices for creativity. And that's the stuff that I taught. When I got to Disney, I got a lecture that for me was the difference between being an amateur and being a pro. The guy that was talking, a guy called James Baxter, talked about the principles of animation, but also the principles of the animator. So the principles of animation, they're like squash and stretch, nice silhouettes, charm, things like that, right? But the principles of the animator are also like, understanding physics, understanding acting, understanding storytelling, understanding collaboration. Like, how do you finish something so that it's done and goes up on a screen so that millions of people will see it blown up 100 times its original size all over the world forever, right? Like, when you're playing that game, you can't practice enough, right? Like, that's world class, that's the Olympics of drawing, So before I left Disney, I was the one giving that lecture to younger artists because I became a student of the game. Like, how do we turn thoughts into things at the level of imagination? And so I think, like, my skill is not being an artist. My skill is being a storyteller. And then whatever I can use to bring that story to life. And that's the core practice. And when you have something like that, then it's a pretty robust stream that's hard to block because it's got a bunch of different angles. It's not just drawing. I'm working on this company right now called Laetro, and we are bringing together the world's best artists for an on-demand service for illustration. Like, we are building what... Hey, no, get out of there. Seriously. Yeah. No, hey, you, stop it. Nope, I'm talking to you. He did actually chew a cable right there. You're going to have teeth marks in the cable right there. You little fucker. I love you, you little fucker. Before I left Disney, I was the one teaching those classes to the artists. And then
Laetro.
And then I built this consultancy, led to Laetro. I, these days, doing a little bit less art than I may have been doing in the past, but I'm also creating what could be $1 billion company that will get a ton of work for other artists. So that's also creativity. It's not just making marks on a piece of paper. I have multiple streams of creativity so that if there's a block somewhere, there's enough flow. And that's another practice that I had.
Yeah, because it seems like that instance that you had with your block, it was so extreme it was even physical.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I was miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was blocked in every way.
Yeah.
Like I hardly ate. yeah, it's just like physically, I was really, and it, it gets that way. We are under an enormous amount of pressure, and especially artists, because there's not like, think about this ecosystem for artists, for example. Almost, like a high percentage, probably in the 90s percentile of artists are essentially small businesses, right? I'm not going to say freelancers, because that's a different, like, a freelancer is a concept, is one I don't totally hew to. Like, a freelancer is, you have your lance. We might have talked about this before. Like, you have your lance. I'm a freelancer. I got my lance. I'm looking for a king. Somewhere there's a king who's going to help, who's going to allow me to use my lance in the way that I know how to use it. Bullshit. I'm a soloist. I'm a small business. I run my own company. I might session with other musicians. I might be a part of a team. I might work at a studio. But my artistry and my livelihood are mine. I own that. It's not a lance I'm looking for a king for, right? So I better have some practices to not be blocked, because I'm a pro. And they're out there. There's a ton of them. Just gotta keep finding them.
Yeah, and hopefully this platform will allow you to reach out and access those people, and then they will have, an infrastructure where they can have a really good benefits.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be amazing for artists. It's another channel of creativity. Like, I may not be painting, but I built this whole pipeline system to be able to track illustrations and get artists paid. And, like, that doesn't end up on a canvas, but it's also an act of creativity. Building a community. You don't have to be an artist to be creative. Anybody who's looking to turn a thought into a thing that matches their imagination, there are practices for that. And so, yeah, that's the joy.
Yeah. So are there like physical routines and practices that you have to keep up so that you can be more in your state of creativity?
Yeah, there's a million practices. There are, what are the, I don't know, what do you have? Do you have practices?
Recently, in terms of my health, I feel like I've been more and more aware of taking care of number one, like,
Right.
which entails like getting good sleep. It doesn't always have to be perfect, and the exercise, like the physical.
Yeah.
I feel like if I don't move around, if I don't get my heart beat up, I just I start heading towards chaos.
Right.
But if I can at least maintain some sort of rhythm in terms of my physical,
mm-hmm.
then it enables me to maintain.
Hey, that didn't even affect him. Hey, man.
Yeah, it enables me to maintain my vision.
Right.
And stay on path. I'm turning 34 this year, and I feel like I'm just finally, and especially with the pandemic and the world changing and seemingly like a snap of a finger.
Right.
I feel like I'm finally getting to a point of like maturity and being an adult. And
yeah. There's a powerful moment where you say to your folks, "I got it from here," and you own your life.
Yeah.
Like, they can be there for mentorship, but it's your, hey, no, get out of there, you little fucker.
Oh, he's fine.
Okay.
He's fine. Yeah.
Okay. You know a practice when you find it, right? So for you, physical is really helpful. One of the practices that I have is I call it my medicine. Before I go to bed every night, I just have a pencil and a sketchbook, and I just make marks. And rarely does anybody see those. They're not for anybody. They're for me. It's just, this is my medicine. Like, I don't drink. I don't do the hallucinogenics, and my work is kind of hallucinatory, but I don't get there using those things. This is my medicine. My sketchbook is my medicine. So that practice of just keeping the flow going. I try to stay out of judgment on it. I just make marks and I watch and I go, oh, that's an interesting mark. Or no, that one's not so great. I'll rub it back and knock it down. And sometimes I'll make a full big drawing and then I'll rub the whole thing down, because it's not about the result. And that's also another important thing for artists to get is that they're, like we always talk about process, but it's really important to have a practice of loving the process. We generally get good at stuff because we push ourselves, and the pushing of ourselves sometimes has we're hard on ourselves. And you have to find a place to just be yourself. Cool, I can judge that, or I judge that game, or I judge that delivery, but there has to be a place that just lets you be a little bit out of judgment, and that if you don't like what happened, you just tear the page out and throw it away. Like I have people look at my sketchbooks and they go, oh my God, Dave, this sketchbook has 50 amazing drawings in it. That's fantastic, and they don't know that the sketchbook came with 150 pages, So I think that that's part of it. It's just finding practices that let you be yourself and kind of turn down the harsh judgment self-critic a little bit. That's really helpful for unblocking yourself.
Yeah. Now I think for me it's the wanting to have everything perfect, right? Like before I do anything, it has to be this immaculate image, and a lot of times I'm succumbing, not succumbing, but I'm learning it more that, actually just getting to the next step and loving that process, and learning that process.
There's a phrase that says, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? And then I learned something. One day I was at this festival, and I ran into these young bucks who had this thing called a dab. I had never heard of it before. And me and my friend Tony Cole were walking by these young gentlemen. I can't remember exactly who they were. And they introduced us to this thing called a dab, which is a highly concentrated bit of marijuana. And so it's 8:30 in the morning. It was the last day of the festival. We had to clean up this giant, Tony and I, when we put stuff together, we had a festival. We put an art studio together. We were collaborating on a piece that we basically had on a wheel, and Tony's left-handed and I'm right-handed, so we could work on it at the same time, and then we would spin it, and then we would work on it, and then we would spin it, and then we would work on it. It was an amazing collaboration, and we made a mess, and we had all of our stuff out, and it was just the cleanup was going to be a disaster. So we stopped by these young guys, and they smoked us out with this dab. You remember?
Yeah, I think I remember.
I'm not sure if you were there.
I may or may not,
Yeah, the whole thing is blurry for me. And we're walking back to our space to clean it up, knowing that we had to get it packed up. We were going to run down to the hot springs, and then we wanted to get back to my place at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, right? And we were so baked that it was impossible to make choices. And the reason I'm telling this story is because in response to your question, one of the things that came from that is we had 1,000 things to put away, and we looked at them and we're like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? This is overwhelming, right? And so Tony was like, yeah, okay, I know. This I know goes here. All right, that's a good start, right? And then I was like, oh, all right, cool. I know this goes over here. All right, cool. And then we'd look at it for a while. And Tony was like, yeah, if we just do the next honest thing, maybe this all will go where it needs to go. And that became a principle that we actually applied to Art Temple from then on. Like, could you do just the next honest thing, right? And if you could identify what the next honest thing was and just execute that, would it be possible for that thing to relay to you what the next honest thing was? And if you were just staying in that place, then you could be present to the creation, destruction, construction of whatever it is that you were up to, just being honest for the next thing. It became a really powerful tool for us later on when you would have a crew of people and you would tell the crew, here's the deal, just do the next honest thing. When we're breaking down a huge tent of all of these different things, just do the next honest thing. At some point, the next honest thing might be, hey, Dave, I finished that thing. Where else do you want to point me? But it's not like every 30 seconds somebody going, okay, I did that. What do I do next?
Yeah.
So finding that next honest thing, staying in that place, like that's another practice for allowing a flow.
Yeah, and that's looking inwards, right? That's taking a personal stake and responsibility into the next action.
Right. It's also a good way to help your team build intuition, right? So you judge, what's the next honest thing to do, right? Instead of, oh, I'm lost, you just go, well, what do you think the next honest thing is? And then there's an intuition that gets built. It can get course corrected, but it also is really helpful for a team because they have some autonomy inside of a structure.
Yeah.
That was a good festival.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a beautiful festival. What's up with dudes in long hair? With long hair.
Well, I'll tell you, mine is just a function of neglect. I don't really have a fashion sense. I finally got my hair cut about 3 weeks ago, and it had been 2 years. So I'm just this is a little bit different. Like my daughter went her last semester of high school. She went on an expedition. I've done a bunch of expeditions in my life. Like I was on a search for a lost temple in the Andes once as the expedition artist. That's another story. Somebody calls you and they say, hey, would you like to be the expedition artist on a search for a lost temple in the Andes? You say yes.
You say yes.
There's actually a National Geographic show on that right now called Secrets of the Andes or something like that. It's the second trip. The first trip that we did, a guy died on our trip, and so we did not find the temple. And so, kind of took the trip in a different direction.
Yeah.
You're on an expedition is what happens. So it could happen. That's part of the exhilaration of going out yonder. But my daughter had experienced me doing a bunch of expeditions and she wanted to get started. And so she took 6 months of her last semester of high school and did an outdoor winter in Canada, in northern Canada. And so, 50 degrees below zero. It was brutal. It was amazing. And so she went through this really gnarly experience. And so I know what it's like to do an experience and then come back and everybody's the same and you're totally different. And so I grew a beard so that when she came back, there were some things that were different, and then I just stayed. But as far as long hair, I don't know. I don't like, it's just as long as it's out of my way, I'm cool with it.
That's good. That's good. Why do you think art is so fundamental and essential to life?
I think it goes back to that other piece about like we make to emulate the maker. I don't know that people will let themselves be that deep about it. It seems really simple. We say matter matters, right? The word matter, it means that it has some importance. It is the mater, the mother, like we make things because that act of creativity is divine. And I think that you can add complexities to it wherever you want. But, man, it's just about the love of the light. right? And it's the light that's bouncing off a soft peach or a soft cheek, or the light that comes from inside. It's that we love the light and want to hold it for a moment. And so we make these things that make it look like we almost got it, you know? So, yeah, I don't think that's ever going to change. That's a human condition. It's been painted on the walls for 50,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and even in times of like crisis, right? It's like the best art comes out. Some of the best art comes out.
Yeah, when I do my talks on creativity, the way I end my talks is I say that, every crisis this earth has ever faced, before man even got here, was solved by profound acts of creativity, right? Profound acts of creativity solve these crises. And crises like an algae bloom, heat rises, it evaporates the water, creates a cloud cover, and then that cloud cover drops down cooling rain that helps diminish the algae bloom. Like there are solutions that are, it's called in physics solving for the gradient. That is, that there's a gradient, there's a change, and to bring it back to homeostasis, you solve for the gradient, right? And so our intelligent systems on Earth are constantly solving for the gradient, but they're solving in such unbelievably complex ways that it would be hard to diminish them from something intelligent, right? Like when we get to the place where we say this is artificial intelligence, we still won't be making life, right? Like a flower blooming has an intelligence to it. A forest has an intelligence to it. An ecosystem has an intelligence to it. I don't know. Why was I talking about that?
No, just
I was just going off.
Yeah.
I feel like we create because we're part of something bigger. Like I was saying before, like my expression is an expression of the intelligence that's asking for something to come forward. I do my best work when I'm listening.
Yeah, listening is it's so fundamental.
Well, that's what I was saying. Profound acts of creativity. Like every crisis this earth has ever had has been solved by profound acts of creativity, right? The mitochondria in a cell has a different DNA than the cell itself. At one point in its history, the mitochondria and the cell were two different things. They got together and threw a party. Hey, man, maybe we should hang out together because I'll be your, what do they call it? Factory, right? I'll be your factory, the factory of the cell, they called it, right? And then you can live longer. You can differentiate. You can make some choices about maybe you want to be a heart cell or maybe you want to be a lung cell. And now we can do a bunch of things together because all these cells can live longer because of this symbiosis. Then we can add to other symbioses and then we get all of this, right? And so profound acts of creativity, collaborations that were not foreseen before, that's what solves crises.
And I think that's one beautiful thing that hopefully is going to keep on coming out with our current situation with the pandemic. It's at least from the perspective of the people who are aware and alive right now, it's one thing that for the first time has connected us all.
We now understand our interdependence. And also we're kind of pissed too. Like who hasn't gotten their vaccine, right? Like even if you're worried about the vaccine, shit, the side effects of COVID are worse than the side effects of the vaccine. You want to pick an evil, pick one of those, but like we're interdependent. And it's a little sad, the level of maturity that we have on Earth right now. Like we're still not mature enough to get that. And so we need to change the story. We need for people to understand that matter may matter, but it's not the only thing that matters. That this idea of material realism is wonderful, but it's not complete. that we don't have the math for love, but we absolutely know it exists.
Yeah, like one of the statements that to me it's so powerful is, we have the power of gods, right? With the nuclear, we can destroy ourselves completely. We can eliminate life as we know it. Yet we don't have really the wisdom.
Right. We have the power of gods and the maturity of a child.
But I do think that now, the more we acknowledge that, then we can start really building upon it. Now that we can see how interdependent everything is, the next step is bridging those symbiotic gaps,
Yeah, like telling a bigger story.
Yeah. And it's not just a story, it's the reality. The reality that things are connected.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all the shortages that we have now. Since World War II, we've created this environment where different parts of the world start really building other things. And so now that it's been shaken up, thankfully it's not something that removed everything and destroyed everything. Now that we see that, then what do we do with it?
Right. Well, you say it's reality. Let me give you the secret to life, the universe, and everything is that today's reality was yesterday's story. So what we believe is real started as a thought. It started as a story. And you can argue like this is real, but this was also a thought, right? Like there's people that are going to watch this or listen to this on airwaves after it's been recorded, right? Like this is a little miracle that we got going here, So what is real is more up to us than we think. And when we can tell powerful stories, it's not just a story. It's how we believe in things. And what we believe, it affects reality. And we may not be able to change the course of the sun, but we have a lot more agency than we think. Like this, the Buddhists, the Tibetan Buddhists call this the wish-fulfilling jewel of a life. Like this particular incarnation for us is the wish-fulfilling jewel of a life. We as humans have the capacity to affect our state in the scheme of things. Dogs a little bit less so, trees a little bit less so, right? But we can make choices that will allow us to rise our energy up in the reincarnation, in the schematic, the samsara wheel of reincarnation, right? But this wish-fulfilling jewel of a life, it really, you can take a thought and turn it into a thing and change the world. We had this idea a year and a half ago, and it was just me and Brett talking about stuff. We're a $6 million company right now. We're fully funded. We got 100 artists on our platform. In a year, we might have 1,000 artists on the platform. It started with an idea. So did everything in this room was a story. So, yeah, I want to just really emphasize the power of a good story.
Yeah.
It changes reality.
And I think the most powerful story is the one you tell yourself, right? The internal narrative that you have, which eventually does come out,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
it gets fortified. It becomes more and more real from the inside.
Yeah, well, how do you believe? Do you believe in yourself?
Yeah. That's actually a huge thing for me, for example. I grew up with two older brothers that are super duper achievers. And I was the one, they were skipping classes. I was getting D's. And growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of belief in myself. But I do remember, like, my mom saying that, and I was still fairly young. She would say, you know what, like, you are someone who, if you put your mind to it, you can be the best person out there. Or you could be the worst, like, and you can affect people. I remember one time when I moved schools, it was my first year to this new school, and I was able to convince my friends to skip school, not tell anybody that we're going to go to the mall and have fun. And then we did party afterwards, and the next day, of course, nobody told their parents that they were doing this. The next day, we go to my parents' house, and everybody's parents were there.
Oh, shit.
And they knew that, like, hey, there's this kid that has...
Oh, you're causing trouble.
Yeah, to gather some sort of people and into something.
Right. Well, it's a kind of power, but you have to be careful with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even younger, I had a moment where, I wanted to create like a fraternity, and pretty soon I had friends and peers and people I didn't know, and we were cleaning up, like we were helping clean the school. Self-belief. It's when you can finally justify to yourself why you're doing the things you're doing, and then that you're being honest with yourself, and your intentions, which is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time me reaching out to you and saying, hey, I have this idea, it's related to crypto and stuff like that, and I pursued the idea to a certain extent, but I still wasn't sure if I should really give my entire time to it. And you asked me a very simple question, which was like, who does your idea serve? And at that point I was like, oh yeah, it kind of serves the darker side of things. And might be legal or whatnot, but at the end of the day, it doesn't allow for more thriving. So
right. Simone de Beauvoir, she said, and I'll paraphrase, basically she said that your greatest freedom will come when you create a situation for the greatest freedom for others. And I just thought, oh shit, that is amazing. Like, let me think about that for a minute. Like, I will create freedom for myself by creating freedom for others. And so, yeah, that's the game that I want to play. That's the profound act of creativity that I want to engage in. That's the service.
Yeah. Yeah, to me it's when my selfish intentions are completely the same as my selfless intentions. Where I'm able to see that what I want for you is ultimately for you to thrive because it affects me.
Right.
In a very positive way too.
Right. There's kind of a funny thing, like you can get anybody anywhere to do anything you want them to do, as long as the thing that you want them to do is the thing that they want to do. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, figure out what they want to do, help them do the thing that they want to do, and you can get them to do it.
Yep.
Why not?
Yep.
Right? Like, it sounds manipulative until you get inside of it and you go, oh, damn. Well, they're all right with it. Right? So, yeah, so that's that's why I think that like collaborative creativity is where we start to multiply.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also it's got a very exponential component to it.
Yeah. Good story lights a fire.
Yeah, the narrative. I think a good narrative is some of the most powerful things in the world, in the universe.
Yeah. I have a workshop that I do called Story is Everything.
Okay.
And so it's really about understanding the power of story, your internal story, an external story, the global story, the story that we're in. There's it's like this thing has a ton of layers. There's the story of the storytellers, right? Like, who are the guys telling the story? What's their credibility? Like, you go to see a Disney film, it's a film by Disney. Those are the storytellers. That's awesome. You go see Beauty and the Beast by Disney. But if you saw Beauty and the Beast by Roscoe's Garage, I mean, like it might be a little bit different thing. I might not be so excited about it, And so there's all of these levels to story that really make it, like this machine for belief and reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting dark out, huh?
It's getting pretty late.
Nice. I gotta go put my goats away here soon.
Okay.
I got goats here.
Oh yeah, your goats they love climbing up trees. That was the first time I saw a goat be up in a tree.
Well, yeah, I mean, I built a little thing to help them get up there. Like they've got a little runway that they can run on. They don't go directly into the trees, but they do climb around. They love climbing. Yeah, my goats. Shout out to my goats. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Yeah, Wednesday passed away, and we didn't get Thursday and Saturday. So.
Okay, so I guess the last thing is, if you could finish this thought, I want my art. ...
Oh, I think I'd say I want my art to awaken people to their own magnificence.
And with that, thank you so much for your time, Dave.
Hey, brother. Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, lovely to spend time with you.
Thank you.
All right.
And to the next time, hopefully.
All right, onward and upward.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Okay, that was it. If you've gotten this far, thank you so much. At one point, I mentioned that my brother skipped class, and I'd like to clarify that they actually both skipped a grade. And you obviously noticed that the video was not the best framed, and the middle camera stopped working. I'll try to make it better next time. Lastly, I have posted links about Dave and his work. Dave is truly someone who cares.